Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jim Grant. The Messages of Inspiration and Hope is proudly brought to you by the good guys at the 6minutewebinar.com. And today, as you can see, our guest is Matthew Gardner. He's from up in Canada. I started to say California, up in Canada. And I thought he was from Phoenix because his group is the Phoenix Rising United. We're going to ask him about his group and what he does. And he is a young man that's really created a group to be able to reach out and help others because he made a lot of mistakes in life. And then a young lady that I know from Phoenix, Arizona, she is in Phoenix. Met her there several times. Becky Norwood. The thing that really popped out at me about Becky, oh my goodness gracious. She has brought over 300, listen folks, 350 authors to have a #1 best-selling book. Holy smokes. I mean, I knew she was a ball of fire, but we're talking gone. You don't even see the smoke anymore. She's that far ahead of everyone else. And we're looking forward. We're going to be back with Matthew in just a few moments. And like I said, we're sponsored by the good guys at the 6minutewebinar.com. And we'll be right back right after this brief message with Matthew. Stay tuned.
Hi, and welcome to the Messages of Inspiration and Hope show that's proudly sponsored by the 6-Minute Webinar. Today we have some exciting and very interesting guests, real people just like you and me. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy the show. Now here's Jim.
And thank you very much. That young lady is Charlene Fouch. She's one of the many folks here behind the scenes that helps this show be a great success. But I want to welcome Mr. Matthew Gardner to the stage right now. Matthew, how are you doing, sir?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Jim?
Doing good, doing good. We're so glad to have you on here. And when I read your story, my goodness gracious, you have a Facebook group there, Phoenix Rising United. And I mistook when I saw Phoenix, to me, when I see Phoenix, that means Arizona.
Yeah.
But he lives up in Canada. And I'd just like for you to share, how did you come up with the name Phoenix?
Well, purely inspiration. I mean, I live my life by excitement and inspiration, just as the, this idea of messages of hope. That's how I live my life. Mm-hmm. And it came to me about a month ago, maybe a little less, born really out of my endeavor this year in 2020. My fiancée passed away from terminal cancer in April. Mm-hmm. And my life was a series of evolutions from there, just rising from the ashes, that the spiritual nature of the phoenix. And I hadn't really considered it symbolically. I hadn't considered it metaphorically. I'd just been on my journey as Matthew Gardner. And then one of my coaches said to me about a month ago that you need to get a logo. I'm like, what are you talking about? A logo? I use my face and my name. That's all I'm doing here. And, but I'm receptive. I'm coachable. So the next day I was looking up some stock images, not related to a logo, but just happened to be a phoenix, like right in the middle of the screen. And I'm like, what the heck is that doing here? It's totally unrelated to what I was looking for. But I felt something, Jim. The moment I saw this picture of the phoenix, it ignited something in me. And then this word or this phrase just came to mind, Phoenix Rising. And I'm like, wow. Yeah. And it just evoked such an emotional ignition within myself that I'm like, I think that's the logo that I've been looking for. So I just been running with it.
I like that story because that's what you do in life. You follow the energy where it leads you to. And Matthew, you've got a very interesting story. I know you overcame a lot of conflict. You call it ashes of conflict in your life. But I'd like for you to start, just share a little bit about, where you grew up at, what your childhood was like, anything like that you'd like to. And then we'll get into, the bad choices you made as a younger man.
Sure. I mean, straight away, I was pretty well born into an environment of conflict in terms of emotional communication breakdown between my parents. My parents divorced when I was 3. So I always, just from the beginning, had a certain level of anxiety, not knowing who I was, split between my mom and my dad. When they separated, they didn't have a lot of communication between one another. So it's challenging to raise a child when you're not communicating with the other parent involved. And my mom essentially grew up in stress mode after the situation. And there was a lot of happy times for sure. And I mean, she obviously did her best, and I survived, so she did a great job. But because of the stress and kind of her aptitude for, I guess, maybe holding a grudge towards my dad, and she had a lot of anger, and that just came out a lot during the stressful times, and even it was volatile at certain times. And I just thought that was normal. I just kind of grew up with that. But I had such a deep anger in myself and never had a healthy outlet to really heal it. So that came into my later young adult years, my late teens and early 20s. And eventually, to kind of cope with all these emotions that I was dealing with, I began using cannabis just to kind of cool off and relax a little bit. And I did. I stopped living with a fear mindset, and I was able to let go of some of the anger and anxiety. But as a result, I kind of polarized, and I was like, you know what? I've been living my life of fear, playing by all these rules. I'm sick of that. So I rebelled the other way. And so I stopped going to school, and had a big situation with my mom where she's like, you can't live with me anymore. You got to live with your dad. And that was the beginning of almost a 5-year journey of like deep self-discovery in terms of realizing like, hey, I'm obviously not doing the right things with my life. So, after that happened, I got involved with the wrong crowd, got into drinking and smoking on a regular basis, even got involved in retail crime for a period of time, and had some like super close calls with the police. But I was like, I realized that was the wrong road for me to go down.
Yeah.
Looking for love in all the wrong places, that sort of thing. And then I realized that, that behavior, I kind of started growing out of it. My best friend at the time, who kind of got me involved in that sort of behavior, particularly the criminal stuff, he just came out of my life, and I just moved on. I kind of grew out of it, but I did keep up with some of the drinking and smoking behavior. And the height of my awakening was 10 years ago on September 2010, Labor Day weekend. And I'd been drinking. I got pulled over for speeding, and simultaneously I was in school for criminology. So I didn't have a lot of leeway with this. If I had any kind of criminal record or traffic violation, any career in the criminal justice system would be obsolete. So I knew that when I got pulled over, that I had to somehow like talk my way out of this or negotiate my way out of this. And it's kind of just the mentality I had at the time that something like that was even appropriate. But this officer, pretty big burly guy, just walked up to my car, and he just barked at me to get out of my car because he could smell alcohol. So I'm like, oh, geez, not a lot of room for negotiation here. So I just said, no, I'm not getting out of my car, because I knew that if I did, that's pretty well the end of, my future. So I said, no, I'm not getting in my car. And I lit a cigarette while I was seated in my vehicle. I was in a Honda Civic, and my window was rolled down all the way. And needless to say, he didn't appreciate that. And he called for backup. And then he came back to my car, and he tried to pull me out of my vehicle, tried to open the door, and then I closed the door, and then he tried to reach in and grab me by my collar through the open window. And the moment he grabbed me, I grabbed his wrists to get him off me. And then he just started pummeling me in the face. And it was this, full on assault. And I, through the whole time, like, I never felt like police brutality or anything like that, but I'm just experiencing that. And it's like this surreal experience. And I'm like, wow. And then he got in the car and continued, and then pulled me out. And by the time he pulled me out of the car, I was surrounded by 5 or 6 officers, and there were red and blue lights everywhere. And the same guy, obviously, took a liking to me. So he, then kicked me in the ribs, and he kicked me in the face. And I had this big boot mark on my face for a little while after. And as I'm going through this experience, Jim, I'm like, you know what? I obviously created this for myself, and it's, I definitely don't condone that type of thing, but I never, say police are bad or anything like that, because I just realized, it was my own decisions that got me into that situation. And it was, fine in the sense that it's the wake up call that I needed. And it took about 1.5 to 2 years, and the whole thing sorted itself out. But, I was able to really pick myself up and get on the right track, so to speak.
Yeah. Let me interrupt there. And because the thing that I see there that I really like about your story, Matthew, is that you're revealing the things that you went through, the emotions, the things that you, like you said, you didn't know any better, being raised like that. And I understand that. I used to tease people and tell them that when I grew up on a farm in North Carolina, I didn't know we were poor until we went to town. But the thing that I really admire about it is that there's probably someone out there, a parent or something like that, can say, hey, this young man, maybe my young guy trying to find himself, you might be able to connect with him. And they could get them in touch with you there. And they can do that. They can email you there. I got your email address there at MatthewDavidGardner@gmail. And also you got a Facebook group. Just go to Facebook.com/groups and then put in Phoenix Rising United. But one of the things I want to commend you on is the fact that you own it when you made a mistake. You didn't point fingers or anything like that. And that's very important when you're trying to pick up the pieces of your life. You're trying to get in the right direction. You got to quit pointing fingers at others, and because there's two sides to every story, and you got to own it. And you did. And that takes that shows a lot of credit there. And I give you a lot of credit for that. And you said here, 2 years later, you'd completely turned your life around 180 degrees. Okay. And you did something that I tell people do all the time. I mean, I'm 72, and I tell people all the time, you need to surround yourself with like-minded people that are going in the same direction that you're going. And that's exactly what you did, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that was the mission critical move that I made at the time. And a couple times a month, I would be part of a mastermind group. And on a daily basis, I began to engage in personal development and just create new friendships and, realized for the first time that there are people out there that actually support my goals and dreams that were quite a bit different than what my family would have, considered as appropriate or normal or possible. So I just felt, a new level of support.
Sure.
And that's where things really began to turn around for me.
One of the things that I really like about masterminds is when you're with like-minded people and you have a true mastermind, it's amazing all of the positive energy and new ideas that just pop up and just flow there. It really encourages you, number one. Number two, it helps you to stay focused on what you want to do. And number three, it opens up doors that you didn't see open before. Is that some of the things that you've experienced, and anything else in that area?
Yeah, it was really the spiritual awareness for me. I got a very deep spiritual background. I've been that way my whole life. It's just, I wasn't listening to those silent or whispers, or those subtle whispers rather, earlier on in life. So, but they began to get louder, and I realized, you know what? There's a lot of things in my life that I put myself down for that are actually assets that I have. And there's a lot of things that I've had ideas for that are not terrible ideas. In fact, they're amazing. And I can start to actually promote them and create a movement with them. And it all started around the summer of 2012.
And then I'd like for you to share a little bit about your beautiful fiancée, Gail. You first met her, you say it was in 2015?
Yeah, so 2015, and that was really like a brand new chapter opening to my life. For about 3 years, I did the personal development, worked on myself, got my mind right, and then I was in a position to have this really amazing relationship with Gail. And she was about 19 years older than I was, although you would never know it meeting her and seeing her. She looked like she was in her mid-30s at the most, full of energy, very kind, loving person. And she, there's obviously a resonance there, this deep soul connection where we began dating, and one thing, led to another, and it was a great experience. And then, it was really my relationship with her that led to this whole Phoenix Rising United, in that in 2018, she received a breast cancer diagnosis. So that gave me an opportunity to really let out a whole new part of myself as a caregiver, as her best friend, as a level of support that I didn't know I felt was in me, but I never had the opportunity to express it or share it with anyone. And so that's really how our journey went. It was healing. It was full of growth. It was full of inspiration. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, she passed away in April of 2020, this year, after the cancer became terminal.
That's an amazing story, because you're right. When you start focusing on giving to others and helping others, and you put their needs ahead of yours, it is so fulfilling all the way around. It really is. And my heart goes out to you, and I'm sorry that you lost that beautiful lady, because I tell you, that's a huge loss for you.
Yeah.
And with your spiritual awareness and the mission that you're on now, how has that been able to help you since Gail passed? to be from that point to this point here as you go forward and you look into 2021? How is that? How are you able to help yourself with what you put together?
Yeah, well, I mean, the number one thing that I learned when Gail passed away is that, while the physical body may die, the consciousness lives on, and they live on in
Yes.
spirit. And so, I've been able to maintain that connection with Gail in a very profound way. And her passing actually opened up those spiritual awareness abilities for me in a way that I'd never experienced. And so just following that energy, following that excitement that we were talking about before, that led me to inevitably create this Phoenix Rising United, which is all about understanding that death is a part of life. It's not the opposite of life. It's part of the cycle of life. And that we're consistently burning away the old and reconstructing the new. And Napoleon Hill says, "The thing to go rich, you got to burn the boats." And sometimes that's a conscious decision where you're making a decision to move forward from something. But in some cases, it's the situation of life where it's like, hey, I've obviously created this for myself, and now it's my opportunity to use it as a launching pad rather than a burden that I'm going to carry. Now it's actually a platform for my growth. And that's essentially what my experience with Gail became. And now I've created that for others with the Phoenix Rising United community.
That's really amazing, because right there, I mean, you've hit two big areas there where you could really reach out and help people that's overcoming grief, that they've walked through down the same path that you've walked down. Plus earlier, the young people that may be in an act of rebellion or still trying to figure out the big three: who am I? Who do I think I am? And who do my friends think I am? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing, because now I understand, because our common friend is Don McGrath.
Yeah.
And Don told me, he says, "Jim, you got to have Matthew on the TV show."
Yeah.
He said, "That's all I'm going to tell you." And so now, ladies and gentlemen, you can see why Don McGrath told me, "Jim, you got to have Matthew on the TV show." And I'm so glad that you're here, because this is a tremendous opportunity for you to reach out and help others in their hour of need.
Yeah.
And you use your awakening gifts to serve you say spiritual entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
We don't normally think of spiritual and entrepreneurs together,
Yeah.
but in the way you worded that, I'm gonna let you share that, how you visualize that, please.
Yeah. So, I mean, the idea of like an entrepreneur having a holistic ability to serve, and, often in business, we think about the bottom line and it's about the money. And of course, that's an aspect of business. But I see spiritual entrepreneurs as shifting that gear to, like, money is an aspect of business, but the focus is our passion, is our excitement, and our service to others, however we express that. And there's no right or wrong way. But I see creative self-expression as really the real currency that we're all dealing with here. And as we share our gifts with others, that makes the world a better place. And so when I talk about spiritual entrepreneurs or spiritual seekers, it's really that idea that they're going within themselves to a deeper core of trust in who they are and honesty about themselves with who they are. And from there, they can flourish. They can have a greater magnetism in what they do, a greater level of charisma. And the end result of that is just living a higher quality of life, a more magnificent quality of life.
Absolutely. You're so correct in that, because so many times we get caught up in the physical. And when we're caught up in the physical, let's say that, for example, what we really value on planet Earth is the things that we buy and pay cash for.
Yeah.
But the free gifts that we have that are priceless, like the heartbeat in your veins, the breath in your lungs, the intelligence that you were given, the love that you have for others and others have for you. I mean, we don't seem to realize how valuable that is. And that's exactly what you're talking about there, Matthew. When you start focusing on helping others and coming from, when you get out of the physical and just come from love, you've automatically opened the door to abundance.
Yeah.
Everything else will start coming your way. And people will wonder, how in the world are you doing it? And because they're focused on the physical, like they got to pick up this mountain and move it. And you just simply, the mountain just goes away. It's amazing. I've seen it happen in my life. And I know you have too, Matthew. And that's how you reach out and you really help others. And once they reach that plateau, they just literally take on off, don't they? There's no stopping them.
Yep. 100%. I love that, Jim. And, as we just follow our heart, there's no end to the love. Like unconditional love is a limitless thing. And the more we allow ourselves to have from that source power, if you will, and the more we share with others, it just continues to fuel our tank. And that's been my experience over the last 8 years of my life.
I describe it as like kind of like sunlight and oxygen. You can be in the sun all day long and breathe as much as you want, and you won't use up either one of them, which is very true. And you're also a personal transformation specialist.
Yeah.
And I'd like for you to share a little bit with people what you do there and how you came about, how that came about for you, I should say.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, if you look at my story and where I went from to where I am now, the whole thing's about transformation, personal transformation. One of my mentors talks about how the idea of like change, well, Buddha says, change comes from within, right? And the idea that our external circumstances don't matter. It's our state of being that materializes our reality. So when we really get that inner world right, life is a hall of mirrors and it's going to reflect back to us. So the basis of the work that I do isn't about shifting things in the world as much as it is changing our mind about the world that we see. And then that automatically leads us to behavior that's going to be more progressive and lead us to greater levels of success in the world.
Absolutely. And, I listen a lot to a tape, when I say a lot, from time to time, Earl Nightingale, The Strangest Secret, and he covers that very well. And the thing of it is that it's not hard. It really isn't. What makes it difficult for us is that we're so physical sometimes we don't want to let go. And that's when you enslave yourself. And this Phoenix Rising United, where do you visualize that going to, and from its humble beginning, because everything has a humble beginning, and I know it gets energy, and where would you like to see that go to and grow?
Yeah, it's really for spiritual seekers that are looking to have a community that supports them. And the idea behind Phoenix Rising United is to realize that our passion can support us. Just as, you've got this amazing TV show, and this is obviously supporting a lot of aspects of yourself, not just from the financial aspect, but the fulfillment aspect, the emotional aspect, the connection aspect. So to understand, like, there's no reason to live in fear. So people that have had any level of trepidation to really having that full creative self-expression, Phoenix Rising United is an environment for them to access the tools, resources, and community to ignite their passion and allow it to fully support what they're doing in life.
And one of the things that's very rewarding for you, I know, is that when you can reach in and help someone get from where they are to where they want to be, and they make that transition. And would you be kind enough to share maybe one incident of an individual that really you were able to do that with and work with?
Yeah, I mean, it's all in the mindset shift. So I've had a couple clients actually where they were dealing with health issues earlier this year. And it's a fascinating thing because I find often like health challenges are a result of like our emotional challenges. And so in a process of a few minutes with one gentleman who'd been dealing with back pain, chronic back pain, and, taking medication and things like this, I was able to help him basically realign with that source power. And he was able to, hasn't had back pain, was able to stop taking medication. I don't recommend that. I'm not a doctor or anything, but that was his personal choice. He didn't need it any longer. And similar circumstance where later on he was going to need hip surgery or because he's having issues. And he had realigned his mind, reconnected with that source power, and it like healed his hip essentially. And it's not me, it's that source power. It's when people make that transformation in their own inner world, their own mindset, and they realize, wait a second, I created this because it was serving me in some way, but it's not serving me anymore. So I can let it go and be realigned. And then since then, I'll share one other success story that I feel is very relevant in the business world. A gentleman named Bryce McKinley, who's was a good friend of mine and also a client. And he was actually able to host a really successful webinar where they did well over 6 figures in revenue, and he had his highest closing rate ever. He did over a 50% closing rate. And the most important thing, though, with that, Jim, is he did it totally stress-free. And this word that I sometimes use from one of my mentors called imperturbability, meaning it doesn't matter what's going on in the world. Nothing's going to perturb us. Nothing's going to bother us because we know we're the author. We know we're creating it. And so those are the types of results that I've been able to help people with.
Yeah, that's one of the things that one of our good friends, Bill Heinrich, talks about. Bill wrote a book. It took him about 25 years to write it, 7 Levels of Truth. He's all about energy and love and all that. He said, it doesn't matter what's going on right now in your life. You're at the perfect place.
Yeah.
It's just perfect because you're going to survive it. And when people go to your group there on Facebook.com groups/Phoenix Rising United, how often do you post on there? Do you do live videos on there? What kind of communication? What kind of network?
So there's content in there every week, and people that join that group, they'll be prompted to join my masterclass, which is hosted every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. It's a true masterclass. It's a true opportunity of a classroom for people to explore their own inner world. And we basically help people elevate their state of mind or their consciousness to have greater self-awareness. And it's an amazing environment. It's free to attend. So when people join the group, then they'll gain access to attend the masterclass. Wow. And then we're constructing a community through the Facebook group as well, where people can interact with one another. And it's a very exciting project.
Oh, absolutely. Because whenever I go to, classes or attend meetings or stuff like that, if you're going to be participating in it and you're going to be contributing, the time flies by, and you get so much out of it. It's fun. It's not like you're sitting there and you're watching someone, share information or show charts or things like this. This is live energy, and it just really vibrates through you. And like I say, the time flies. And goodness, we're almost out of time. I got to go to commercial here, but Matthew, you and I, we could talk for quite some time. I'd like to have you on our radio show. We're going to get that squared away for you. And because your message needs to go out on the airways there, because we're about 15 different podcast platforms, over 5 million downloads there. But I'm going to give you about 45 seconds I got to be able to closing comments on anything you'd like to say, sir.
Yeah, well, I would just say, like, my message of hope and inspiration is to follow that inner voice. It's sometimes very subtle, but the more power we give to it, the more we open up our inner ear to hear it and we follow it through, then we can have our own Phoenix rising united within ourselves. We can rise from the ashes and we can really establish our own authority. And I invite you to check out the group, Phoenix Rising United, on Facebook, attend the masterclass, because that's where it's really going to ignite it. And I'll be able to share my gifts with you, and that would be my absolute privilege.
Well, thank you so much. And we really enjoyed having you on the show today. It's really been a blessing to a lot of people out there. Please get in touch with Matthew. Again, you can just reach him there, and his email address is matthewdavidgardner@gmail.com. And I know he'd love to hear from you. And most importantly, if you know of someone that is struggling, regardless of age, whether it's a teenager or whatever, have them get in touch with Matthew. Get in touch with his group. Reach out to him. He'll be glad to help them. Matthew, thank you again for being with us. And we got to take a commercial break here because I need to pay a couple of bills. If I don't, I'm going to get in trouble. Thank you, sir. Have a wonderful day. And ladies and gentlemen, right after the commercial break, we'll be right back with Becky Norwood. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Angel Marie Monticelli with Angel Marie Shines. And I had the pleasure, the honor to go through training for the 6-minute webinar. Oh my gosh, this webinar and how it's structured and how they teach it. Thank you, Speakers Pathway Coalition. Thank you, Don McGrath and the whole team for the 6-minute webinar, because you made it so simple, easy. And the way you lined it out with the outline, I can reproduce it. And I'm already getting the engagement. I'm getting people that are coming back that are saying, oh, I love this webinar that's so short, so to the point, and I love your products and what I'm selling, but then what I'm also, the services that I provide, and I can do any of this because I have the framework. So thank you so much to the whole team, because the 6-minute webinar totally rocks. Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Thank you so much for coming back with us. And we got to invite this young lady to the stage. My goodness gracious, Becky. I mean, when I read your little bio you sent me, the thing that just popped out, you've brought over 350 authors to a #1 bestseller book. And some of you people out there wanting to write a book and want to be a #1 bestseller, not be like me, have the #1 worst seller. I bet you Becky can share a lot of good information with you. Welcome to the show, Becky.
Thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to, while I clear my throat, I'm going to give you a chance to let you share a little bit about who Becky Norwood is and a little bit about your life. And, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Well, I've been in the publishing business for about 10 years. It started actually back in when the economy kind of crashed. I had actually been a saw sharpener for many, many years. Sharpened saw blades in the family business, and actually sharpened big, huge blades with German automatic machinery for the steel industries around the Phoenix area. And some of those saw blades were 52 inches in diameter, so they went straight through those steel beams and aluminum logs and things like that. So it was quite an experience. But when the economy went bad, it was a really difficult time for all of my clients, and many of them either closed or joined forces with their sister companies just so they keep the doors open. But they didn't. They lost a lot of business too. So it was this ripple effect. I also sharpened for all the Phoenix fire departments for well over 30 years. So that was just really amazing time. So at that time I was, okay, now what do I do? What do I do with myself? Because there was no real, while it did eventually rebound, it wasn't something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I had to figure out what I want to do when I grew up.
I'm still trying to figure that out. Like they tell me that, I tell people that growing old is mandatory, but growing up is optional.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And you're also known as the story whisperer. I got to hear that one. I just got to hear that one. So,
there's so much power in storytelling. And I've observed people. I'm an observer of people. I love to just sit and watch. And one of my favorite things used to be when we could go into the airports, like years ago, where you could just walk all the way down to wherever you were going to pick up your guest. And people watching was my favorite thing. But that we all have a story within us. And within that story, today, if you go to a restaurant, you'll see entire families sitting around, and they're all on their devices and they're not conversing with each other. And it's been something that has really struck me as, how do we pass on, or how do we teach our children, our grandchildren, the values of life other than through storytelling and conversations? And, most of us in this world, we don't get through life without having something that just really crushed us. And something that through that we've risen and made many changes. We learn from those experiences, and oftentimes those very things that perhaps we really stumbled and fell, those are the very things that made us be who we are today and the experts that we are. Usually takes us to that life journey of what we're here to serve, how we're here to serve in the world. And for me, my story started in the publishing. When that change in the economy happened, there was a lot of trying to figure out, well, what do I do? And as I looked around, there were a lot of business owners, small business owners, that were not able to hang on to their businesses. There was a lot of people not able to hold on to their homes. And so I started wondering, okay, how can people survive that in any kind of economy? And so I did a lot of research, and I came across a gentleman that was teaching how to use the tools that we have available to us now. At that time, that was probably 14 years ago, when all of that was really, really taking place. But how do they keep their doors open? How do they stay in business? And what is needed? And that's when I started. Traveled back and forth to San Diego. His name is Mike Koenigs, and he was teaching all the different ways that we could get our messages out to the world and the tool sets that were available to us. And they've grown incredibly since then, because we have Zooms and we have StreamYard. We have what we have today for you to be able to have a TV show that, look at those things that we didn't used to have at the ability. And at one of his classes, he taught a lot of that. And then one of his classes, he talked about using publishing, becoming an author of a book to really get our message out to the world, and how self-publishing had become, it was in its infancy then. It's grown a lot now, and there's a lot of tools, a lot of resources available to us. But it just struck that chord in me, because it's something that books have always been my friend. And at that moment in time, I never thought that it would be me being a publisher. It was just the book that I needed to write. And I already knew the name of it. It was called The Woman I Love. And that was me, that had to learn to love myself before I could really, really be who I wanted in the world. I grew up in a family that was tremendous abuse. And at 4 years old, I tried to run away from home to get away from that abuse. Wow. And I was standing out on a street corner in Los Angeles, and 4 years old, scared to death because I had now run away, but now what do I do? And quite by good fortune, an elderly couple found me and took me back home. But the repercussions were pretty tough, from having done that. And so it took me a long time to figure my way and to figure that I was worth it, that I did mean something in the world. And that's how my journey started in the publishing realm. Because once I published that book, it became a #1 international bestseller.
Wow.
And I had formed a Facebook page and a Facebook group, and people were reaching out to me and saying, thank you for having the courage to write a story like that. And that's how it all began. It was pretty interesting.
That's really amazing, because, my good friend, Don McGrath, Don says he has written 6 books. 2 of them are stinkers and 4 #1 bestsellers. But, talking about, what you were saying there, what came to my mind was the fact that so many times when people are trying to get their message across, they want to stay in the facts. The facts tell, but stories is what sells.
Yes.
And you were talking about earlier about the families always looking at their mobile devices rather than communication. We forget that before the printed press was invented, the way stories got passed down was in the form of parables and storytelling and things of this nature. And probably one of the most well-known people who used parables back in that time was, of course, Jesus Christ. And that's the way he taught people, because that's the way people learned. And stories were wired that way. That has not changed.
Yeah.
The printed press never took that away. It just made it, gave us the print to read and make it more convenient for us. But stories really do, they really do sell, and they really do help people get to connect with you. Just like earlier with Matthew, him sharing his story and you sharing your story. You've connected with a whole bunch of people out there that's just kind of like, wow. Especially when I started out and telling them that she's helped over 350 authors to be a #1 bestseller. If someone's out there writing a book, I'd be saying, okay, what's her website here? If you're going to go with the winner, you go with the winner. You know what I mean?
I feel so honored to be on this journey, because I have met the most amazing people, and the connections, and some of my authors will come back 6 and 7 times now, as they continue on in their realm. And for me, it's a constant learning, because in today's world, you have to be willing to continue to learn and find the best ways that are right at our fingertips. But it's just understanding what those changes are and how we can implement them. But the value of storytelling, Jim, is anybody can teach something, but until you start making it relatable by story,
Mhm.
We can use storytelling in our marketing. We can use storytelling in all of our social media. We
Mhm.
can use storytelling in our everyday connection with each other and within the pages of our books. And
Yeah.
that's because that's what makes it relatable.
Yes.
That's what you can recite all the facts and figures. And I personally won't read a book like that. I don't like
Yeah.
those kind of books. I
Oh,
need
yeah.
the story to make me understand, help me to
Mhm. The
understand
journey.
the journey of it all.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. You want to be right there and experience the journey and know how they felt and what they saw and all that. And
Right.
you're exactly right, because when you talk about the TV show, we actually fell into this thing. Because what happened, during the pandemic, we started putting on messages of inspiration and hope, and that was a suggestion by Bill Heinrich, and just inviting people just to get good messages out there. And we had Zoom and we had Facebook Live, so we were off and running.
Yeah.
But what really happened was that Tamara Hunter, she saw what we were doing, and she says, "You got to take this to a bigger stage." And I hadn't even thought about it. And she introduced us to Aaron Hymas, and here we are. And I mean, it wasn't anything where we sat back and, okay, let's have a powwow here and let's do some pondering. Because when you're coming from the heart, the wonderful thing about the story is when you're coming from your heart, it's going to carry you into that journey. And that's what people want to hear.
Mhm.
That's part of the getting involved with you. They want to be riding along in that journey with. They want to visualize themselves with you in that journey. You can't do that with facts.
No, not
You
at all. In fact, I'm going to be meeting with him next week sometime to be able to figure out, because when I publish for my authors, we do these Facebook, YouTube lives. We use StreamYard all the time. When I saw what you guys were doing, I'm like, I got to do that.
Yeah, we use StreamYard just as the foundation, the interfaces with E360, and that's where we get out there to all those millions of devices around the world. And let me ask you a question. What do you feel the most grateful for in life?
That I'm alive today.
There you go. I was going to say, don't say because you're on this show today.
I'm grateful to be alive,
Yes,
to that.
absolutely. And I know we share one common thing in common. Many things, but this is one that just kind of like tops the list. We're both pet lovers, aren't we?
Oh, we are. I have 3 of those little mutts around my feet right now.
I tell you, they really just vibrate love in a house, and it's just joy and jubilee, and they're just a joy to be around.
You
And
can't do without them.
oh, I know. And I tell people from time to time, and I've said this on the TV show many times before, but it's true. I mean, can you imagine what a wonderful world this world would be if everyone had the heart of the family dog, a loving pet?
For sure.
My goodness.
I have a chuckle on that one also, is that I have two parakeets.
Oh,
And I grew up with canaries, and canaries
okay.
can sing the most beautiful songs in the world. And I mean, their song is just incredible. And I had one canary that just would sing its heart out. And you get on the phone and the people say, "What is that?" So one day I had lost that one canary about 10 years ago. And one day I looked at my husband and said, "I need to get another bird." And that afternoon, this gorgeous blue parakeet came into my driveway and just sat there. And we went out and caught it.
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so beautiful!" But they don't really sing; they just make a lot of noise. I said I should have been more specific, but he's still gorgeous. And then about a year later, I was out walking with my grandson, and this bright yellow parakeet swooped just over our top of our heads and landed in the tree just ahead of us. And then when we got up to him, I'm looking for him, and he flies down right at our feet. And it was just amazing. So we caught that one too. And
Wow.
and I still laugh. I should have been more specific, but they're still beautiful, and they still are they're part of our family.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had a singing canary. It was a roller. And I mean, he would sing and sing and sing and just sing.
Beautiful creature.
Yeah. And when he passed away, him and our cat had a very special bond. And that you wouldn't think a cat, especially a Siamese cat, would have a special bond with a canary, but they did. And when he passed away, in the day room where we had kept his cage, she would not go in that room for 3 months. And then it was only occasionally. Yeah, because she missed her birdie. And I mean, that's just amazing how animals have that bond.
It is.
And how they make us feel too, because they can fill a void. And because I've known a couple of people in my life, sad as it is, but the only thing they had was the love of a pet.
Yes. Yeah. Pets are just magic. They're just wonderful. So much comfort. They become our children.
Oh, yeah, they really are. And you also offer an extensive catalog of services supporting other authors, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Would you share that with us, please?
Yeah, there's quite a few things that I offer. Many of them are with joint venture partners, because I realize that it's not good to be all things to all people.
Right.
So what we offer, there's a lot of different marketing aspects between. There's everything from upcoming. We'll be having your own TV show, for authors. The other things that we offer are a digital business card. We offer a custom mobile app. We offer, if somebody doesn't have a website yet, for all of that, social media makeover type of thing, and then social media where their actual media is kept up. Because one thing that I see, I have a whole listing of things like getting themselves branded across all their social media platforms, their website, everything, so that just like Pampers and Coca-Cola, we immediately recognize those brands.
Yeah.
So the consistency of branding, there's a lot of marketing for just getting exposure for their book and their business. And I always teach my authors to treat their book like it's a business. It's your book, it's your business. And because when I first started publishing for others, what I started to notice is that we could get #1 bestseller, and it was with a lot of planning, but it wasn't such a hard thing to do. But keeping that book selling and keeping that book to where it lands in the hands of those who need to read it the most was a whole different thing. And so that's how we look at when we sit down for our first couple of let's get acquainted and let's discover whether authorship is for you. Do you have a course that you can offer? What kind of list building can we do? Do you have something for free you can offer right from the pages of the book? Can you create some videos? And in the pages of the book, I have them create videos. Some of them will do it, some won't, for the entire book. And then we put them into QR codes so somebody can just hold their device over it, take a picture, and you come to live speaking. What does that do? But creates a way for people to get to know you over and above the written word, but also by your personality, by how you speak, to actually hear, do they really want to connect with you? And so most of my authors are nonfiction. I do have a few children's books and different other kinds of biography, autobiography, memoir type of books, but by far the majority are nonfiction. And I say, this book is your business. Treat it like a business. It's so important. So I really carefully screen out the people that I work, my joint venture partners, to make sure that we can offer my authors the very best of the tools that are out there for them, so that that book can help them to grow their business and be that tool that gives them the exposure that they need.
So if they go to spotlightpublishing.pro, that's where they'll find all the information that you can at their fingertips. One thing you said there just kind of like caught my mind was a digital business card, because I imagine that's something that everybody could use. And how does that really work? How do you get the...
What is so cool is that, and I have one, I don't know if I can bring it up real quick and let it be seen. Okay. But what I like about it is it saves as a contact on your phone. And so this is there. This is what mine looks like. So this actually opens up and you can, it'll actually link to like talk about the different products that I have. But when you share it, you can be speaking from the stage and say, well, text 64600 Spotlight to 64600, and it saves as a contact on their phone. Or you can text this app to them and they can and it saves as a contact. You can email it to them and it saves as a contact. So I can have my book on here. I can showcase my authors on here. I mean, it's just, it's a huge, wonderful tool.
That thing's phenomenal, because you showed it to me. When you said digital business card, I'm thinking about, just something, just a digital business card kind of deal. But that thing's like a little miniature website. You can attach things to it, and that's pretty cool.
I have, we just did a book launch for Helping Hands for Single Moms. It's a nonprofit organization here in the Phoenix area, and they're using it. They got one of these for their nonprofit, but all of their board members are using that same digital card for their fundraising because not only do they have their books there that are showcased, but they're able to use it, send it out for the purpose of fundraising. And they're so happy with it. It's just tremendously excited by what they have at their fingertips.
And when someone has that, they can change the various information there pretty easily, couldn't you? Or update it.
Yes.
Wow. That's pretty neat. I mean, that's impressive, because that would come in very handy, because they text you and like the Spotlight is 64600, you said, and you automatically get their information. They get the business card, and it's a win-win situation.
Yes, and what's so nice about it is that it has these features up at the top, so you can click on it and it emails them. So I don't think you can see it. So you put the subject in and you can email it to them. You can text it to them. And it's right there. You're able to use it. Especially when it's really good at any time, but especially when you're out networking, people want your business card. But what do we do with business cards? We don't use them the way we used to.
Oh yeah, I mean,
we get a whole stack of them, and do we look at them very often?
Yeah, and I've gotten some business cards, and when they come home, you got a stack of them. You look at them, going like, okay, I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember this person here, but when you have something like that, it's real handy, and they can just go through like a little miniature website. Boom, boom, boom. Then they know why you and them had a conversation.
Right. And if anybody's interested in that, I have my vendor for that. I can make it the introduction if they want to email me and ask about that.
Oh, okay. That sounds real great. So let me get your email address up there so people can get in touch with you about anything. When it comes to storytelling, or you want to be a #1 best-selling author, I've got the #1 worst-selling author. You can't have. You do have the #1 with 350 authors and they're and still counting. You need to get in touch with Becky, because I mean, she'd be glad. I've known her, for about a year or so, year and a half, something like that. So we see each other. When we come out to Phoenix, Arizona for the events and all. And be sure and email Becky at becky@spotlightpublishing.pro. That's her email address there, and she'll be glad to. In fact, she'll be glad to send you her digital business card and let you take a look at it. And that way you'll just be like I am when you say, wow, this is really something. It's one of those deals you can't live without. And we've got about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to let you just share anything that you'd like with the audience out there. The stage is yours. I mean, because this is your
gift. I think all of us have treasured gifts that the world is just waiting to experience. And what better way than through the printed page to be able to share that message? I offer, if you go to my website, I offer free discovery calls. And I'm also got a download that is included to today's presentation. It's the 4 pillars of a story well told. And those pillars are becoming an advocate, a truth teller, a way shower, and a unifier. And that's how we stand as leaders in our world today. Our world needs us.
Mm-hmm.
Our world needs your story. It needs to know who you are and what you're all about, because we need leaders today in our world. And so I am just so grateful to be here today and so enjoyed this conversation with you.
Well, Becky, I'll tell you right now, we're very glad to have you with us today, because it's good people like you and Matthew that make this show what it is. I mean, it started way back during the pandemic, and people ask me, says, how'd you do it? And I said, well, I just mainly remain quiet and let the good people talk, you know.
You're a good host.
well, thank you kindly. But it's really a pleasure for me to have all these wonderful people on here. And Becky, you are making such a positive impact in a lot of people's lives, because I imagine during your travels, you've also been able to take that doubting Thomas, the person that doubts themselves, and they don't really have it, because we all have certain gifts and talents. And it's our responsibility to share those gifts and talents with others, because, ladies and gentlemen, there's someone out there you can connect with that I can't connect with, or Becky can't connect with, or even Matthew. But it's your responsibility to share your gifts and talents with them, because that's when you open the door to the abundance of life. And I know that you've been able to take some people that say, well, I don't know if my story's any good or anything like that. And I forget who it was, but I think you'll appreciate this. I heard this comment. The guy says he wrote a book, autobiography, and he says it's based on a true story. He had a wonderful sense of humor. I love people like that.
The stories that people tell will impact. And I know most of us love to pick up a good book that's filled with stories that make it relatable. But what we learn, what we can learn from one another is so important. And, sometimes it's just one little thing that somebody will say in the pages of a book that transforms your own life.
Oh, yeah. It really does. And somebody can say something that just really, hit you a certain way, and it clicks. It feels kind of like a void in your life. There might be a little void, but that just, wow, I needed to hear that,
Yes.
And that's so important. And Becky, thank you so much for being with us today. We're almost out of time, ladies and gentlemen, and it's been a wonderful show. And most importantly, be sure and get in touch with Becky. Visit her website there at spotlightpublishing.pro. I know this lady personally. She is top notch. And I bet if I tried, I bet she could turn me from a number one worst selling author to a number one best selling author.
I think that would be quite easy.
Does it require any intelligence? That's usually the barrier that I gotta
Look what a wonderful host that you are. So yes, you could do this.
But please reach out to Becky, because one of the things that I know, regardless of what your business is, you could definitely, like to get that digital business card, because that thing is, oh goodness, think of all the money you'll save on printing, and plus it's like a miniature website right there in your phone. That's just that just blew me away. Yeah. And I'm going to bring Matthew back just for a second as we close out. And Matthew, we're so glad to have you on here, and both of you folks. I mean, my goodness gracious, you just gave a tremendous story, and I thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. It's just a great pleasure to be here. It's a wonderful community that you're developing, and it's such a pleasure to share my message with the world. So thank you.
Well, you're quite welcome. And we're about out of time, so I'm going to be closing here with one commercial as we finish paying a few bills here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. I salute Becky and I salute Matthew for being with us. And both you guys are, touched my heart in places. And we hope you enjoyed the show. Please share the show with others. Most importantly, please get in touch with Becky and Matthew and share their information with others, because there's someone out there that that can use the information they shared today. I'm Jim Grant. Thank you again. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.
A whole new level of clarity. That's what I received when I implemented the 6-minute webinar. Look, there's no shortage of things that you could be doing to grow your business, to grow your audience, to get your message out there. It's quite dizzying. However, when you get the perfect message in front of the right people, it has an amazing ability to get those folks into action. And so much that is out there distracts us from getting back to that message and finding that right person. With a 6-minute webinar, you can absolutely do that. Hi, my name is Dustin Matthews. I recently implemented the 6-minute webinar in my business and have seen amazing results. And I've gotten a whole new level of clarity. I highly, highly recommend you implement it in your business.